1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting of the 16th of June. It's extraordinary to think that next Tuesday is the shortest day. We're here already.
I have my moments.
Okay, thank you. Now, just before we get started, and I'm sorry there's not a lot of people here, but Stephen's asked me to let you know that at today's Mayor and Councillors' lunch, there will be a prepared briefing on the organisational performance plan and Citizen Insights Monitor, so if you could please make sure you get to that lunch if possible. I know sometimes if the meeting finishes, we don't end up going to that, but it's quite important today, apparently, that you go. Thank you. Right, moving right on, we have apologies. There's apologies from Councillor Darby for absence, Councillor Brewer and Wood for lateness, Member Tamahiri for absence, Councillor Stewart and myself for early departure. Someone move those apologies. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Actually, can we also put Councillor Penrose in there, please?
Councillor
Oh, is he? Right, sorry, I'm here. Seconded by Member Taipari. Thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Were none. Confirmation of the minutes of the last performance meeting on the 19th of May, moved by Councillor Close, seconded by...
Oh, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, all those in favour, aye, against, carried. Thank you. Petitions, there are no petitions. Public input, there are no public input. Local board input, we have 2 local board input today. We have Lisa White. Is Lisa here? Lisa, would you like to speak to the Clark Road, Hobsonville, and then we have Peter Haynes and Glenda Fryer to talk to Wilman Street.
Yeah, thank you. Our resolutions are in the report. We are supportive. This particular piece of land isn't overly useful because it's just a little triangle that'll be made less useful by the road realignment, and it is adjacent to land we own that will be developed as sports parks. So the board was happy to support the disposal of this, but we just wanted to remind councillors that there have been significant increases in the number of SHAs since this area was structure planned way back when. So the densities that are happening in Scott Point and Hobsonville Point are far more than were envisaged in the Waitakere days. So there is still a need for acquisition of quality open space that's useful. This isn't particularly useful. And a reminder that the acquisition of Bond Point is still not settled. This isn't just a council issue. There's an issue with valuation. Hobsonville Land Company valuing it residential, we're valuing it open space. So there's room for wider consultation with government ministries on this area for open space acquisition to ensure the amenity, because we are getting concerns raised by existing residents of the level of open space amenity already, and it's not yet finished. So, but we're happy to support this one because it's not particularly usable. We are still keen to make sure we have high amenity outdoor space there.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions to Lisa? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. And we have either Glenda or Peter or both at the same time.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everybody. Kia ora. Thank you firstly for the opportunity to address you. We wish to speak to the proposed disposal of the Weramu Street property on the agenda. A problem we have is that because of the deficiencies in the report, and the complicated nature of what we're discussing, we can't really properly discuss the need for a facility that we're suggesting on this site. We need a more involved, deeper conversation than we can possibly have today. I just note also that at the outset that the board's resolution on this matter wasn't attached to the report, and I understand that it's been circulated. We sent a copy to the Secretary of the Committee, and it's been circulated to committee members. So turning first, I'll concentrate my comments on the advice of the Community Places team, which is to be found in paragraphs 13 and 14 under local board views and implications. Rather than giving you our resolution, they gave you the Community Places team's views. So turning first to the first bullet point in 13, that the Community Places Network Plan does not require additional facility provision in this area. I'd point out that there are some very good reasons why it doesn't. Firstly, the plan, and indeed the Facilities Network Action Plan that comes out of that, does not deal with the type of property that we're looking at here, or proposed facility. It does not deal with leased spaces. If you turn to page 3 of the plan, it says, quote, "As these buildings are bound by the terms of the lease, they have not been assessed as part of this plan and are not in the immediate scope." So it's hardly surprising that if you base your decision on the plan, that you're not going to find a need for this facility, because the plan doesn't deal with such facilities. Nor does the plan actually look at the provision of older persons' hubs, of course. It looks at, there's a list on page 3, arts and culture facilities, libraries, pools and leisure facilities, venues for hire, and libraries, none of which we're talking about here. It looks at community centres, which overlap with what we're talking about, but it's not the same thing at all. Now, I understand that you are not going to allow the Grey Power representative to speak today, and unfortunately she was going to outline the sorts of things that an older person's hub, the functions that it would cover. As I was saying before, we need a deeper, more involved conversation so that we understand exactly what it is that we're talking about here. But no, we're not talking about a general community centre. It's quite different. We're talking about something that's specialised, that meets specific needs, that require a different sort of space. Just one example of many is I'm told that there is a need for and a desire to do a survey of older people, certainly at least in the broader isthmus, and you can't run something like that out of a general community centre where you might be hot desking or something of that nature. That simply wouldn't work. So whilst, and we readily agree, the Wirramoo Street site would not make a very good general community centre, we're certainly not suggesting that, although the officers seem to think that's what we're talking about, and that seems to be the only thing in their mindset. We do suggest that it would make an ideal older person's hub. In fact, the plan doesn't really address the needs of older people at all, and you only need to turn to the action plan to see evidence of that. You see youth, 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 youth. You don't see older people mentioned at all, which is quite ironic, because when you look at the plan itself, it actually does identify specific needs that older people have.
Peter, could you talk about Wirramoo Street rather than,
Well, I'm talking about the
this is a whole
report.
new subject for another day.
That was my point. needs to be deferred. But I am actually addressing the key points that the officers make in the report as to why this should be disposed of. Now, if I can't talk about that, then it seems to me that the most important aspect of your decision is something that I can't talk about.
Well, I'm interested. Don't know about other people.
So, going through the other points that they make, there's a point about the operating and maintenance costs. My understanding is at the end of the day the board would be meeting those anyway. It talks about the Mount Eden War Memorial Hall being well located to support the needs of the Balmoral community, which is not what we've ever suggested. Actually, we're back there to the general community centre, and we're not talking about the Balmoral Community Centre. Community, after all, they do have the Mount Eden War Memorial Hall situated there. And we're not talking about providing versatile spaces for short-term hire anyway. This simply underlines the point that when we talk to officers, we were essentially talking about different things and talking past each other. And that's not terribly useful when it comes to your making good decisions. Last point in 13, current utilisation figures indicate that there is available capacity within the local portfolio to meet service demand. Same point here. We're not talking about meeting the sorts of service demands that are dealt with in the network community plan. We're talking about something entirely, well, not entirely, but distinctly different here. Turning to paragraph 14, the community facilities team has confirmed that it does not require an additional facility in this location. Well, once again, we're not talking about something that's within the scope of the plan, so of course they would come to that conclusion, but we're talking about something different. So we're talking about something that we believe actually is needed, but which the then community facilities team didn't look for. They didn't know to look for it, and therefore, surprise, surprise, they didn't find the need. They say that, just in a second, okay, when I come to the end of 14, they say that they do not support retaining this residential property due to its limited functionality as a community facility. Once again, we're not talking about a general community centre. In fact, and you know, you really ought to hear from Grey Power, the facility would require relatively little repurposing, which is the last bullet point in 14, relatively little repurposing because it's not a villa. It's actually already been repurposed into another purpose, which is not, which fortunately results in a structure which is very close to what you would need for an older person's hub. For example, an enlarged room, which would be good for largish meetings and various other things. Well, yes, if you want to, yeah. So the significant costs we would dispute. You'd need to know more about that before you could make a good decision. And in any case, the local board, even though it has very tight budgets, being one of the least well-funded local board on a per capita basis, if not the most underfunded, least well-funded board on a per capita basis, we would look very hard and chip in if we can, and I'm sure we could. So where does that leave us before Glenda makes a few specific points? Where does that leave us? Okay, very quickly, on the highest level, it underlines the point that we're not an age-friendly city. We're nowhere near it. We haven't even started, because when we go out and we look at our community facilities, we're blind to the needs of older people, the specific needs of older people, and this represents an opportunity for the council to start down the road to an older person's facility and to start to recognise the specific needs of older people.
Thank you, Peter.
It also, as I said, the report doesn't actually address what we're talking about because the plan on which it is based is not complete. It's only a partial plan. It looks at part of the community facilities, and therefore any conclusions based on that are invalid.
Well, Peter, can I just say that I'm sorry the Deputy Mayor is not here. The Deputy Mayor met with Richard and Anne-Marie, funnily enough, last week, and gave them an undertaking that we would look at a senior hub facility for seniors in Auckland, but not as part of this work. So, I hear what you're saying, but there is actually another side to that story.
Penny,